Alright, so I'm back home. I've been home for about 9 or 10 days now, and I've had a lot of time, to think about my trip. I finished editing together all the video that I took. I've updated my blog, every single day of the trip. I've written about every single day of the trip and what we did to the best of my memories. I think I've got most of it covered. There were a couple of tour guides whose names I couldn't remember, and probably a couple little details here and there, but for the most part I really think I captured the spirit of the trip, or at least how I experienced it. It was truly the best thing that I've ever done. I was so excited going into the trip. I remember thinking, oh wow, man, the trip's only in 5 weeks. It's going to be forever. When do we get to go? And then it was 4 weeks, and then 3, and 2, and 1, and then finally, we're on the plane, and it was all just so surreal. The whole time we were over there, it was like a dream. The whole trip was almost perfect. Aside from me, throwing up in Berlin and really not getting that much sleep, the trip was just about perfect. It was everything I could have hoped for and more. Some of my favorite parts of the trip, the food, for one. The food was amazing. My Uncle Chris asked me how the food was, and the only way I could really explain it was the best food of my life every time I ate. I didn't eat a single bad meal on the trip. The worst meal, and I hate to use that word, but it was probably that first night we rolled into Budapest, and we had the fried turkey. The only reason I couldn't even finish all that was because I'd eaten such an awesome lunch at that Hungarian rest stop. Everything we ate was amazing. My favorite meal was probably that second night in Prague when we had the Czech goulash. The food in the United States, just doesn't even compare to what we had in Europe. That first night I came back, Kirsten took me to North China for some sushi. The next day I'm trying to figure out what I want for lunch, and nothing sounds good. I just wanted to be eating European food again. Breakfast every morning, that continental breakfast was just amazing. Having a bowl of cornflakes in the best milk I've ever had, and all the meats, cheeses, the yogurt, granola, the eggs, the scrambled eggs there were amazing. They're unlike any scrambled eggs I've ever had before in my life. All the types of bread and the jelly. Oh man, when we were in Prague and we had that cherry jelly, all the German food that we ate, all the different types of wurst, the Coke in Europe was so much better than the Coke here in the States. Got a liter of cola at a rest stop. Man, I downed that thing like it was nothing. It was so good. And I still have the bottle. I have a Coke bottle from every single country we visited. As far as my favorite city, that's so hard. When we got in Berlin, I thought for sure that Berlin was going to be my favorite city. Just the spirit, the atmosphere there was just, it was overwhelming. The second day when we got to see the Berlin Wall, and that was really powerful. I've always wanted to see it, and I finally got to see it for myself. But then, we went to Prague, and Prague was just amazing. All the architecture, all the old buildings. We're going on the tour, and the tour guide Yitka would say, yeah, this is a young building here. This was built in the 1700s. So like there are buildings there that are as old as our entire nation, and they're considered young. You can almost convince yourself that you're living in the 18th century. Prague was beautiful, and I thought maybe that would be my favorite city. And as we rolled into Budapest, I was less than thrilled. I'm looking out the window and I'm seeing these overpasses with graffiti, and it just looked like urban sprawl. Once we actually got into the city and started walking around, the beauty of the city really shone through. Got to see Heroes Square, which was probably that may have been my favorite site in Budapest. All the statues were cool, and all the history that she was telling us about. It really makes me want to try to study some Hungarian history. It was really interesting. We went to Vienna, and Vienna If there was any city that didn't quite live up to my expectations, it would probably be Vienna. But the parts that we saw seemed very touristy. I mean, you couldn't bat an eyelash without seeing something with Mozart's name on it. Well, I had my first doner kebab in Vienna, and nobody can take that experience away from me. That was just pure bliss. That was the best sandwich I've ever had. Just I can't even begin to explain just how perfect it was. I can still taste it. Dave said it. That it wasn't just like these individual components. You could taste it. It was all just one flavor. Everything came together perfectly to create this one flavor, this one experience. We went to Munich. Munich was spectacular. I mean, being in Bavaria, being surrounded by the whole Bavarian culture, it was so quintessentially German. Munich personified that just perfectly. It's so great just being surrounded by all this culture. That first night we went to the beer hall, and the waiters were wearing the lederhosen, and the waitresses were wearing the dirndls, and it was just like so cliche, but it was just perfect. Went to Heidelberg, and Heidelberg was beautiful. It wasn't so much of a big city. This was more of like a big town. It was larger than a village, and it had lots of buildings, but it had a very towny kind of atmosphere. They have the 6-week summer program in Heidelberg that I really badly want to do. 5 to 6 hours a day of language studies multiplied by 6 weeks. That's over 150 hours. Between 150 and I think 180 hours of just classroom study. Plus, then you go out into the community and you go out to these cities and you speak German with real Germans, and especially after doing like a 6-week stay in Germany with such an intensive education, I know I'd be bilingual. I absolutely have to get back to Germany. I have to get back to Europe. I was watching the videos, as I was editing them, the scene where everybody on the bus is singing Bohemian Rhapsody. That just that says it all. By that point in the trip, we really had become like a family. When I started the trip, the only person I really knew was Dave, and my aunt, of course, and Dr. Asa. I walked out knowing over 30. I became really good friends with everybody. There was so many good things about that trip, and so few bad things. The number one was I just didn't get enough sleep. Throwing up in Berlin really sucks. There were a couple of times I got cranky. It was really kind of weird visiting Mauthausen before we drove up to Salzburg. Because Salzburg, is the birthplace of Mozart. It was another place I was looking forward to, but I was still kind of bummed because of the concentration camp, so I didn't get to enjoy Salzburg as much as I would have liked. But it was still a good experience. Dave and I got some of Mozart's balls, and the little chocolate candies, they're called Mozart's balls. They come in pairs. Getting back to the bad things about the trip, there really weren't that many. And without my Aunt Jennifer, this trip wouldn't have been possible at all. I had heard about the Jan term trip, and I had told her about it, and I was just like, yeah, there's no way I'd be able to get the money together in time. It's a shame, and she really helped me out in that department. And I'm forever grateful because she enabled me to have the best experience of my life so far. I could just go on and on saying the same thing over and over again. I just cannot stress how great of an experience this was. So I guess, I'll stop there. And, yeah.